Today's Friday, and we are talking about significance of our actions. So, Eric, I know that you had something going on with your daughter, and you're trying to help her to kind of understand the significance of the decisions that we make. Did you want to kind of start us off and share a little bit of that?
Sure, and I just feel like it's a really exciting time because my I'll just kind of just put it out there. We just had the show about Common Core last week, and I was almost like my heart was opening and warming, with all the guests that you brought on, and then all of a sudden this week I learn, and I'm like so excited to share that my youngest daughter, my 10-year-old Alana, decided to opt out of the ELA standardized test in New York
Mm.
State. And it was, I learned about it on text. I wasn't part of the decision at all. I just heard about it from mom text, and I was, oh, cool, so she decided to not even go to school that day. And I'm like, wow. And then the next day I heard on the news that about like less than 75% of the kids took the exam in New York State, or at least in my area. And in order to quote unquote qualify for funding or what have you, at least 95% need to take the test. So already my 10-year-old daughter is part of a movement that is going to reshape how these tests are going to be used as the evaluation tool of the teachers in this generation. And coupled with the fact that you don't really matter in this world until you're 18, and then for other things 21, right? So and for a while, and for this whole week I was just like, what are the things that our kids can do to like have them feel significant, and how do we celebrate that with our kids? And that part was just really exciting, that within the same week of our show on Common Core, all of a sudden we were celebrating the courage of Alana to opt out. It wasn't a big courageous moment, but it was something. And she at 10 now has significance. And now I'm kind of on this, like, I don't know, search, like, where else can we help our kids feel that significant, and what are we doing to get in the way of our kids feeling of significance, and how do we get out of the way um, of that? So I mean, that's why I was kind of chomping at the bit and kind of salivating to talk about significance today.
Well, what a great topic, Eric. And to me, helping your kid achieve significance, you need two components. You need an outlet or multiple outlets for your children to have a voice about something, or make something, or create something, or do something, some kind of accomplishment, achievement, whatever it is. And then you need to let them know what the impact is. They need to understand that there is an impact to whatever this is that they're doing, this statement that they're making, this thing that they've created. That it's not happening in a vacuum. It's not like they just built some little Lego thing in their room and they're going to take that apart and build another one. So just as an example, my younger son is very interested in science. He reads a lot of stuff. He watches MythBusters. He has to know sort of the answers and what's behind everything. And he's very, very upset about fracking. This is, he's like,
Good.
he's on a campaign to end fracking. Doesn't understand why anybody would want to do it. And it turns out that there's a guy at our local library who's sort of the head of innovation or whatever, and we have this thing at the library called a maker space where they do 3D printing and this kind of stuff. But my younger son has hooked up with this guy, and they're going to try to do some kind of a project on fracking where they can generate some type of public interest in it and response to it. So giving your child an outlet letting that voice be heard, and then showing him or her that there's some impact to this, that you're making a difference in some way, even if it's for just one person, I think is a part of the equation.
The thing that I'd add, maybe, Thomas, there's a step before that. This just struck me when you're talking. What if the step before that was awareness?
Yes.
That I'm not even aware that there are these things going on that I have the potential for. So am I aware of me, and am I aware of my world? I love your concept of fracking. I mean, what would cross a kid's mind, to be aware enough of fracking? And I think that's probably a statement about all of this stuff. What significance comes because you tuned in and watched and something struck you. And I think as guides, as parents, as guides, we should encourage our kids to be tuning in and finding the places that affect them, where they can then start to see that, this great line. So I'll have to give this great quote by Buckminster Fuller. It's my favorite quote. He says, "What is it on the planet that needs doing that I know something about that probably won't happen unless I take responsibility for it?" I mean, that's a significance. That's a life leader. That's a own your own life. That's a show up big to your own life kind of statement. That I think if we as parents encourage that in our kids, the starting point is, what are you seeing that affects you? And then maybe there's a place in there about impact and about significance.
Well, I'm listening to all this, and I'm like, it just triggered something in my head and got me thinking. There's probably a group of these parents and possibly even the kids that understand the significance of what they're doing, and that's why they opted out of that test. But what I wonder is how much of that is actually what percentage of those people are actually educated on what's going on and the real reasons why they opted out of the testing, as opposed to the others that were just lemmings, just saying, "Oh, I don't want that either because whatever." And as we talked about that Common Core episode last week, which, Jay, you missed it. It was a good one. I think that was a great episode because it shared what the real premise of what Common Core is, and this could be just a group of people that are fighting against something that they don't truly understand what they're fighting against. Are you with me on that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so what's the reason why we follow along? And is it truly significance, or have we not done our own work and we're just riding along wherever the crowd's going? Are we getting pushed with the wave, or did we see something in this that really challenges something about we know of ourselves or we know of our world that needs our conversation? And maybe that gets to the guide points, to the guardrails where we as parents are trying to show our kids what's going on with them and their world to elicit some kind of reaction, some kind of response. What here is beginning to strike you because you're showing up in your world, and how will you show up in a significant way? Well, it's not about everything. Part of the reason why some parts of the world light up is that some parts of the world should be dark for you. It's just too much, the process. So where are the points of significance for you where they're true? And Chris, you bring up a point in that. Where are you authentically significant versus it's just the loudest voice and I'm going with where everybody else is going?
Right, and I think we get a lot of that in society today where it's like you hear it on the news and then so you're just like, oh, that's fact. Like it was on the news. But then you change the channel and they're saying the exact opposite.
That's really true. During the last election, you can't help but see all the stuff on TV and the campaign ads and whatever. And I think I forced my older son to watch one of the debates, and so he said to me, Romney's a liar. And where's that coming? I just think I think he's lying. But it's because in the background, there were these ads and things, and the propaganda is pushed out, and part of it, was what he heard in school, and he had conversations with his friends about this because they talk about it. But it's really fascinating how children form their opinions and their their biases. And one of the ways I've worked on this with my kids is whenever we see an ad for something, some toy, gizmo, whatever it is, and you know, they say, oh, I want that. You know, so, well, you know, that's an advertisement, and they're very skillfully presenting this thing to you to make you want it. They're hitting every pressure point that you have to make you want that thing. So just be aware, you know, that one, there's a good chance it's not everything that it's advertised to be or cracked up to be, but also that there's manipulation involved. And so the idea is, I hope, you know, it's an experiment, but I hope that's going to help them distinguish or be aware that there is that degree of manipulation involved in almost every piece of information that's presented to you in some way.
Well, that's what healthy skepticism is about, and I think, you know, no one gives that to our kids until we do, because the world surely doesn't.
Right.
So it expects us to. I mean, the world expects that that everybody is listening to their microphone. You know, that the world is saying things and you will just comply. And I think one of the requirements on parents is that we should create in our kids the ability to be discerning. You know, to ask that, just to cock your head just for a second and say, I wonder if that's true. Just that one fraction of a second to say, if I were to stop and notice this, I would notice, wait a minute, there's too many things that don't make sense about this. And if I could just in that moment get our kids to pay attention to that little voice that is their own voice that says, I wonder about that. That we could change this blithely following along, blithely, you know, acting like everybody else thing that we do so well, so that their significance turns into a true personal significance because they thought about it.
And it all begins with having that conversation and that communication with your kids. So Eric, will you kind of go into a little more? I mean, we've kind of got a little away from what you were sharing. Where are you at right now?
Well, I mean, I think it's still, you know, I mean, I'm rethinking so much right now. It's just like even my job as a guide, and kind of in following up with the opting out conversation. I had a conversation with my eldest daughter, who's 14 and amazing, you know, and I spoke with her about the water challenges that are happening in California, and we both agreed that, you know, all these things that we're, you know, all these solutions that are being kind of poo-pooed because they're expensive. I'm like, you know, okay, something's expensive, but so is drinking. You know, like if you're not living, so like who cares how much it costs? So with that context, you know, we both sort of agreed that sort of this whole U.S. economy has the chance to topple, you know, has the chance to like really be looked at in a totally different way. Like, what is money? It's just paper that we've made out of trees, right? That we believe has some value, and we've all sort of agreed that it has the similar, you know, meaning in our lives. But what if, you know, something like water goes away, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, you know, it's game over, like new game. You know, I mean, like it's time to really look at things totally differently. So last night at around, I don't know, 9:45, when everyone else was asleep, all the other kids were asleep, we talked about, like, you know, how cool would it be to have a pen pal in California for, you know, from kids in the East Coast who are surrounded by water, and in fact, you know, maybe even experiencing floods and lots of things as the thaw happened, you know. So it's just really interesting, you know. We have the potential to be so connected, and how cool is it? How significant can our kids be in the lives of other kids? And how do we get out of our own kids' ways, you know, to let them be? I mean, you know, Jay, you said all the time, and you know, we're all great, you know. So how do we get our kids' greatness, you know, out of the way of them expressing their own greatness? And how do we ask the right questions and kind of inspire the right moments and pull away from those advertisements? You know, it's funny, Thomas, that you mentioned, you know, the makerspace. I'm sitting in one right now. It's called Ithaca Generator, and like the energy of creativity and greatness and significance is just here, and I don't know how to use half the machines that 12-year-olds know how to use here.
I know.
I think that's
like
the amazing
with the
part of it.
VCR, you know, when kids could program the thing and we couldn't. Yeah, it's amazing.
Wow, that's cool. So you're not in a garage. You're in a, what were you saying? A maker space?
I'm in a makerspace. It's called Ithaca Generator. So that, you know, somewhere nearby is a 3D printer that, you know, that kids could figure out how to use.
That is so cool. You know, I work on Facebook marketing. Like, that's what my profession, I guess, would be. And I'm working with this company, and they work with this other company called Trident Design. Trident Design's whole business is coming up with inventions, and they have these 3D printers. So you come up with an idea, you make it on the computer, print it out on the printer, play with it. Now that's a garbage idea. Next idea. Like, there's big business in that. So the fact that these spaces exist, that's part of that educational evolution that I think we're making. You know, and I don't know. My personal opinion is that's more of the future. Things like that, where you get the hands-on experience and practice, that's more of our future over college. I mean, I know that's probably really unpopular to say, but
bold enough, Chris, to say it. Because,
yeah, I just think
something's
that
not working, don't keep it going. You know.
Yeah. Not that college is worthless, but the structure in which it's in now tears away the ability to create, come up with new ideas, like all of these things that you're talking about. The crowdfunding, you know, that's a whole nother new way of doing business that has never been thought of. So as we're reinventing the business, we can reinvent the way that we exchange. You know, like you were talking on one episode, talking about the Ithaca money, right? Where you guys have your own community money or way of trading. Like, I just see that happening more and more and becoming. I see businesses sharing ideas as opposed to in the past, like, oh, we've got to keep this a secret, and you have, you know, spies from other companies, you know, going into the business to look at what's going on, and it's like, I just see so much more openness and more creativeness happening because of all of this. But I don't know.
Maybe you bring up a good point, Chris, that maybe our thinking is, you know, we pass our kids off to college, so we're still talking about significance, right? So
yeah,
you know, are you significant as you come out of college based on your ability to find some way to show up and do something important? And maybe, so the whole conversation about where is the value of college in a world that keeps changing, it, you know, is the reminder that it's a model that doesn't always work. Just because you started it once, it shouldn't stay like that. It should be flexible and resilient enough in order to roll with how the world is rolling. So if going to school and learning rote, you know, subjects doesn't create for you a smarter, wiser, and more capable, more significant person on the other side, then who's waving the flag that says, well, wait a minute, why are we spending all this money on something that we just do out of course instead of do out of purpose or do out of intention? And so I think significance could go, you know, a conversation about significance, you know, with our kids about everything. Significance in relationships, significance about college, significance about under the choices that they make or how they watch their world. To me, it's a big accountability discussion. You know, for you to be significant, part of it, I think, is that you're understanding that you're accountable for both your actions and your words, and your significance is directly connected to, I think, your ability to see that you do have a responsibility or that you are accountable. And that's in the quality of the choices that you make, the way you interact with other people, that there are all of these places. And so if I stand on high and try and look down as a parent saying, so how are we supposed to guide or support or talk about these things? It's to shine the light on situations that most people brush over and say, you know, no one's really paying attention. They just nod their head that there's a water shortage in California or that everybody goes to college because you go to college. but it's to stop it, to freeze it, and say, so what do you think about that? You know, and in that moment, how might that invitation to a conversation engage someone to look at it and be a little bit more discerning on whether there's any significance in it?
Wow, that idea of accountability, Jay, is so powerful, and not just in sort of our external dealings, but I'm thinking of internal dealings, and I'm thinking of what we model in our own relationships. You know, in a marriage or a parent relationship that is the model for how our kids grow up. And if you have a partner who doesn't take accountability, or who tries to make it appear that his or her emotions are being caused by somebody else, that it's really crucial to model for your kids, wait a minute, that's not what's happening here. We're responsible for managing our own emotions. If we get angry, we get triggered, whatever it is, we've got to own where we are and not say, oh, you're doing that. So because to me that's really the foundation of accountability. So looking at the relationship model, I think is really important. Whether it's you're in a marriage or a partnership, or you're divorced and you see things happening in other places, to pay attention to that and to teach kids that kind of accountability.
That brings up a reminder that I had my son rake leaves that didn't get raked up in the fall, and I go back out there in the backyard yesterday. I'm like, I asked him to rake along the fence line, and then there's like a little tree line. I wanted him to get under there. He got like this one little section where I said, get here. That's the exact spot that I pointed. Right? And I'm like, so break that up. Well, I didn't point to the whole, I had to drag my finger over another foot to get all that. So I go out there, it wasn't done. And I'm like, okay, so how do I approach him, and how do I, you didn't do what I asked you to do, bottom line. But how do I do this and not sound like a jerk and all that? So I take him out there. I was like, hey, so I asked you to rake the leaves, right? He's like, yeah. I said, now if you look over there and you look over there, do you think that my mower's going to be able to get in there and to get those leaves? No. It's like, okay. So do you think you could do me a favor and get those raked out? Because since I won't be able to get them with the mower. He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Okay. Now that I explained that, you understand that, I want to point something else out. If I was an employer and I was hiring you to rake my leaves, which I know it's a chore and all that, but if that was the case, and I came out here and this was the job that I had been left with, I wouldn't be very happy, would I? No. Do you think I would hire you again? Probably not. Okay. So think about that as a work ethic, that you're going to go out there, you're going to do the best job that you can do, and that you're responsible for your actions, So that was the kind of the lesson I tried to instill on that.
Some good coaching in there, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Because Chris before wouldn't have asked all those questions. So nice job.
No, I definitely would not have. But.
Yeah, and maybe that brings up another point that how do we as parents hold our kids accountable for their significance? And maybe it's not in telling them. Maybe it's in the power of questions. What is it in today's world that really gets you upset? What do you think you should do about that? What is it about this relationship with this family, your relationship with your brother, that's really good? How do you do more of it? What's not working so well? What do you want to do about that? And I wonder if that intention of engagement, where we shift out of here's not looking right, here's the answer, go do this, shifts into the process of you see something, they need to see it. How do you ask the 10 questions or whatever it takes in order for them to finally see where you're going with it and then own it? to me, I think there's an accountability conversation in the act of questioning anyway.
And even before that, Jay, picking up on something I think you said about paying attention to it, is that for our kids to feel significant, they have to feel that they matter. So paying attention to them is really important.
Yeah.
You know, if they're coming to us with a question or with a problem or an issue, or even they just want to share something, you know, look what I did in my game, look at my accomplishment, whatever it is. In a minute, I'm busy. If we never pay attention to them, or we make them feel, even though we're not doing it purposely because we're busy, you know, that our grown-up stuff is so much more important, and that these things that they're doing don't matter, then they're going to feel insignificant. So it comes back to that being present and joining them in that moment of, that's great that you got to level 7 in the game, or you know that you did this drawing or whatever it is, to impress upon them that everything that you do really is significant in some way.
Thomas, like that really triggered exactly what I wanted to like reference with the Tony Robbins conversation about significance, because he considers that significance is one of the 6 drives, you know, like drivers of behavior. And he said that one of the easiest ways to create significance is through violence. And you are no more significant to anyone in anyone else's world other than the moment when you have a gun in your hand pointing to someone else's head, controlling, you know, the decision as to whether or not they live or die. And I feel like, you know, when we say as parents, oh, not now, you know, kid, you know, where do they go to next? In these video games, they feel significant. Like, you know, they're called first-person shooter games for a reason. You know what I mean? And I mean, like, you are a significant player of this game, and so like I don't want this to be like the, you know, the Game Changers coming out party, but it's really, you know, I mean, I feel like this world of significance is so important, because if we don't tell our kids how significant they are, there's technology that is easily willing to do it for us in a direction that we don't want it to go. And I feel like that's why I was like so excited about this topic, because significance, you know, I want to spend the rest of my life, and definitely the rest of the 10 years that my kids are, you know, with me, helping them understand their own significance. Not even telling them how significant they are, because like I feel like, you know, getting back to the character building thing, like I want them to know their own significance without the attaboy from me, you know, or the attagirl or the attawoman, you know, and I want it to be self-proclaimed, and I feel like, you know, when I celebrated Alana when she opted out, I feel she was somewhat shocked, because she thought I was going to be concerned, and I'm like, I'm really proud of you, and she really didn't really know where I was coming from in that moment, and now the question is, what else will the kids opt out of that we accepted as a given that is not really a given? And I'm excited for that inquiry. You know, what else can we, you know, question? You know, when kids at 3 and 4 years old say why 20 times, we ought not to give them an answer. We should just say, you know what, let's investigate that. You know what I mean? Because I think the answers that we know are all being proven wrong, like left and right, and because it's just a different time. You know, even Einstein's brilliance, a lot of the things that he thought were answers are now like being proven wrong. You know, he had a different set of lenses, but you know, the great news is that he created a platform so he could say all. And one of the quotes that I love is that the of a society cannot be that created them. So of course we're not supposed to ask our parents, you know, how to fix something. We're actually supposed to ask our kids, because I believe that they're downloaded with some other answers or some other questions that we never had the courage to ask. So I mean, I feel like that's the most significant thing. And at some point, I'm going to want to read, that the quote of our deepest fear about, from Marianne Williamson during this episode. But I'll get off my soapbox and let other people talk.
No, that was really powerful. I think it's neat that when we get the opportunity as parents to really stand up and attaboy our kids or attagirl. I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but like say good job in doing. Yeah, just saying good job at doing something that you made the decision all on your own. To do that, you did the homework and found out what your opinion was, and you ran with it. So supporting our kids in that way, I think, is awesome. So to hear you share that, Eric, I think that's what a connection that creates with your children, and having that dialogue and that conversation. And I think the main thing is just, as parents, helping our kids to understand that their decisions have significance, and that the choices as they get older, the decisions that they have at a young age are less significant, but as they get older, they become more and more significant to who they are, how people perceive them, and everything else that generates life. And so it's, as parents, we are a major influence on their decision making. So I just think this is a really cool subject, and I want to thank you, Eric, for bringing it up.
Can I add something, Chris? Eric, you just made me think about something that, and maybe this is what you were thinking, and it just finally landed in my head.
Yeah, go ahead.
The significant period versus significant because of. So, the conversations that we have with our kids are, you're significant because you got into Harvard, versus you're significant, period. And so I wonder, as parents, that we have all of this pressure. We talk about our kids having all this pressure, to listen to themselves and be significant in their own lives. But we have a lot of pressure because we have neighbors who have kids who are doing this, and we want to hold up to that, and this insane pressure of the voice that says, here's how it's supposed to be, or here's what, the cool people do. So they're significant because they drive this, they live here, they go to this school, they're this kind of job. And so the kids are getting pressured that significant is dependent on a particular outcome. So I think between, Thomas, what you've said, or what everybody said so far, I wonder, and maybe just clearer in my head now, that significance for our kids needs to be significance, period. That it isn't because of what you do or who you are. Yes, there is significance that you need to own your life and show up and be significant, because that's your charge. That's you living to your potential, is to show up and do something amazing with what it is that you got. Now, but you're not significant because of that. You're significant because you're here and you came packaged and you're already great. And I guess maybe that's Eric, you and I have had conversations about this before, where greatness isn't dependent on what you do. Greatness is period. It's packaging. You got it. It's there. Significance is there. What is it that we then do as parents to let our kids know, and to let each other know, that they are significant just because they're here? And we can also celebrate the fact that you have found your thing and are adding to greater value. But how do we not make it dependent on that? That you're significant because you got straight A's. No, you're significant because you're my kid. The fact that you got straight A's, cool for you. Why did you do that? How did you do it? What does it really give you? Terrific. You're still significant if you get a C. We're still going to love you and still have a conversation about it. We may have a different kind of conversation about effort, but you're still significant, worthy of my time and worthy of my love. And I wonder if, as parents, we could zero in on or check in on that a little bit and find out if we're contingently significant or absolutely significant.
So unconditional significance. And
yeah, I can make anything complicated.
And Jay, that it's not complicated at all, and that the word that you used at the end, that word worthy and worthiness, is so important. I before this show, I was on a Good Men Project call. We have a call every Friday called our Evangelist Call, where we talk about a particular issue and engage our people, our writers, and and our community in it. And we were talking about men and shame, and the roots of shame, and shame as relating to violence. We started with a quote that basically all violence is an effort to replace shame with self-esteem. But when you talk about significance and you talk about worthiness, and we came to a definition of shame. Shame is feeling not just that you did something bad, but that you are bad, that you're bad at the core, that there's something wrong with you, that you're less than, that you're not worthy. Shame is this deep feeling of irreparable unworthiness. And so the flip side of that is this critical importance of exactly what you said, Jay, of reminding our kids that they are worthy in and of themselves, that they have it all already, that it doesn't matter whether they get straight A's or C's, it doesn't matter whether they go to Harvard or a community college, whatever it is, they can never lose that significance, and they should never feel ashamed of where they are in life.
So Frank Bruni just wrote a great article lately around, because all of the admissions letters just came out, in the last couple of weeks, and he was talking about whether there's any real value of going to Harvard or not, and Harvard isn't the issue. The issue is what kind of artificial value have we created, and what kind of artificial significance have we created in where you go, knowing that the studies show that it's more about what you do where you go than where you go.
Right.
So, but we still are playing the song out there that it matters most, that your opportunities are greater if you go to one of these big Ivy Leagues, even though it bankrupts the family and it does all the rest of the stuff. That, but I wonder. Go ahead.
I was going to say it can also lead to a sense of false complacency. Oh well, I went to Harvard, so I've got it made.
Yeah.
But if you don't try, if you don't take advantage of all the things that one of these schools has to offer, or you have no sense of direction or whatever, then again, it really doesn't matter. And I want to just share a quick anecdote. I know I sort of interrupted you, but a while ago, Worth magazine published a list of like all these top schools and stuff, and I went and did a study in a database, the company where I worked. This was a database of CEOs and executives and people like that, and I looked at where the top 1,000 CEOs went to college. And yes, about 7 or 8% of them or so went to Ivy League schools, but over 90% didn't. They went to state schools. They went to all sorts of different schools. And so it has so much more to do with who the person is and their drive and what they make of it than where they got their education.
Well, I wonder if that feeds this whole thing on significance. So if you send a kid off to a state school or community college with a great sense of personal significance, now maybe that's the next study, right, Thomas? That it's not so much, who had the grades. And so, Eric, I mean, we're applauding your daughter's fight, about being artificially identified as high performer or not high performer because of a score, when in fact what really matters is the person's personal commitment to why I'm here and what I want. So I know all the things we talk about at the Greatness Zone is exactly that. Before you go into school, what is it you know of yourself? What is it you want this school to help you with? And if you find that engaging and significant, you show up in a big way. So the banner that gets stuck on the back of your car, proud parent of a kid going to wherever, doesn't do anything for the kid going to that school. That's moreover, why am I here, and what is it that I'm studying that I love it enough to show up big, to remind myself that not only am I valuable, because that's the way my parents sent me off here, even if I went to a community college. Why would you? So this, I'm trying to remember I think it was a comic, but he was so true. He's saying, when you say that, you're going to Harvard, the chest comes out and I'm going to Harvard, and you say it in 3 words. It's more than 3 words. I'm going to Harvard. But when you go to a community college, you always say things like, well, my financial aid didn't come through, and I'm going to take some courses, and then I'm going to go into a bigger school, and all of this artificial significance about I should be proud about one and not about the other. So, where are we getting at where the real issue is that what is the press that comes out of the conversation about where you go? Now, I know we're talking about college, but You know, it's the same thing in what play group you're in and what car you drive and what neighborhood you live in. There's all of this artificial significance. I wonder what true significance, I wonder if I even know what it looks like. What does true significance really look like? And how do we even show our kids what that looks like?
Well, I think you have to strip ego from it, because when you strip the ego away, when you strip the self-stroking, you know, my kid went to Harvard, therefore I'm great, you know, or I'm better than you because your kid went somewhere else.
Community college.
I think you get closer to it. I mean, in Judaism, you have levels of charity, and the lowest level of charity is when the donor and the recipient are face to face, and you see each other, and you're handing somebody money. And the highest level is when neither the donor nor the recipient know who the other person is. So there's no ego for the giver, in a sense, because he or she's anonymous, and you don't even get the "oh, thank you," you know, from the person. It's just you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, because it's a good and significant thing to do, to be a charitable person, and you don't need your name up on a wall or whatever. It's not that there's anything wrong with that. You know, we've got all sorts of wonderful structures and halls and creations where people put their name on it. I'm not going to bash them, but that there is something about that. You know, I'm doing this for the sake of the charity. It's not about my ego. It's not like I don't need that boost from it.
So maybe that gets at what significance.
Wow,
Eric,
you know,
there's a Eric question if I ever
it's
heard
really
one.
an awesome.
That's you, Eric. Go.
So I guess what I'm remembering, and this is more to Jay's point too, is that I remember getting my acceptance letter to Cornell, and then going to a concert with my dad at Jones Beach. And my dad was single, and we happened upon these really beautiful women, and for some reason my dad just took it upon himself to say, "This is my son, Cornell." So it was like, you know, it was less than 3 words. You know? It wasn't even like his name is Eric. You know, it was almost him saying, like, you know, my sperm helped create this significant kid who went to this significant school. You know, you might want to try me on. You know, and I don't mean to bash it, because I think a lot of this stuff was kind of you know, subconscious. You know, I mean, he was proud of his son's accomplishments, you know, and whatever, you know, I mean, so yay, I got into Cornell, and, you know, in some way, like, that stripped me of my name in a way. It was a very interesting moment, and I've always had like a sort of a double take, and I'm glad that 20 plus years later I get to, you know, air that.
Wait, I just want to. Did it work? Did it work?
You know, I mean.
We don't need to know that. We don't need to know.
I mean, like, it's
That's amazing. I want to know, like, really? Like, my son goes to Cornell. Really?
So Chris is going to start using that line now.
I was like, right. No.
I don't know if it worked to his specifications, but I feel like it extended the conversation.
Yeah.
That being said, you know, I mean, you know, but I mean, like, I think Jay's question is so critical. It's like, what is significance? You know, I mean, stripping away all this other stuff. You know, what does it mean just to feel deserving, to feel worthy, just because we're here? You know, and how do we really celebrate our kids and get out of even our own programming? You know, the wiring that. I mean, there was part of me that really appreciated being called Cornell in that moment. So, you know, and I feel like most of that part of me is gone. You know, I think I say that I went to Cornell with a different, you know, way about me nowadays than I did back then. But it was such a huge part of my identity, and it was a a sense of accomplishment just to get into this place. So anyway, I just feel like this is a really great question, and I want to spend the rest of my life answering it. So thank you guys for diving in.
Well, the distinction there, Eric, is that it was your accomplishment, not your dad's accomplishment. I mean, yes, he had something to do with it. Obviously, as parents, and we can rightfully be proud of our kids' accomplishments as long as we always recognize that they are their accomplishments and not ours. That having a child who did something or does something it's a wonderful thing, and it makes us feel good, and we're happy for our kids. But it doesn't build our own significance. It's your child's thing. So,
well, I mean, and you talk a lot about kind of the levels of giving in Judaism. I mean, I actually heard this person speaking, this guy, Professor Darrell Bem at Cornell, and he talked about why the abortion conversation is not a challenge in the Jewish world, because Jews are not recognized as people until they graduate, law school or med school. So, and so it was definitely a very interesting,
That's right.
kind of
You're
conversation.
an embryo until you have your JD,
So you have your JD or your MD, right?
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I was enjoying the conversation there. I'm like, I don't have much to add right at this second, but I think this unconditional significance and our teaching our kids their worthiness is just really key. And this has been a powerful conversation, and I want to thank you guys for coming on and talking about this. Eric, for bringing up the topic, because I mean, we literally could talk about this all day because of the. Oh, you want to read that Marian quote? So, Eric, will you do us the honor of reading a quote for us? I love quotes.
Sure, and I just, I mean, I feel like, we've been all over the map with, kind of jokes and different reminiscing about it, but I feel like, this is a quote I feel most about significance. So it's oftentimes misappropriated to Nelson Mandela, but this is indeed Marianne Williamson, who I've had the opportunity of meeting 3 or 4 times, and which makes me significant. Anyway, what she says is, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Big. Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
What do you think about reading that to your kids? Let me just throw that out. I mean, how might that start a conversation about where they are with that? Because there's some really big thinking in that whole thing. Just to find out, what is their sense of this, and how do you make this a conversation?
To that, and I don't mean to plug a book, but I found this book at the bookstore the other day, and it's called What Would You Do with an Idea? That is just all about, you have this idea, people are ridicule you for it, but yet you persevere through the ridicule, and you allow your idea to grow and manifest into reality. This is a total kids book, but I got a lot out of it. So I think this is a good way for you to start the thought process and the ideas at a very young age, And I know what life possibilities and what we teach in those courses, Jay, is really geared towards older high school, college, and adulthood. But we can begin that conversation with something simple as a little kid's book like that.
Absolutely. To start on the simplest level, and what that quote says to me, because I was thinking about this just before you read it, to find out what they're saying to themselves, what we don't hear. Because we hear the things that our kids actually say, and embedded in the stuff that they say are really important messages. But if they're experiencing negative self-talk, which is what she's saying, don't do that, you don't need to do that, that's holding them back, So to be able to get inside their heads and hear them say, well, I tell myself I suck every day, or whatever it is, to know that is the window in to shifting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't change something that you don't understand or that you don't know about, right? So you don't know what you don't know until you know.
Well, I'll tell you, in talking that to Talia, my eldest, yesterday, one of the things that she brought up is that she herself said, and we haven't done too much around this quote other than the fact that I wrote it, I quoted Marianne Williamson twice in a mini book that I used to read to the kids, and that's one of the ways that I got this, kind of this thinking into the kids, and what she said, what my daughter said, was that kids need to know that they have personal power at any age, and I think, and what I love about her saying that is that she knows that. Yeah. And here's what I'm also going to reveal that's sort of vulnerable for me, is that when I was a new daddy, I used to kind of joke with the kids, and I said to them, you own nothing. And it was sort of like me just being, I don't know what I was being, but I was into my own significance and in some way trying to help them feel less so.
I've done that, Eric. This is my house, not yours. You live under my roof.
Sure, and and I think what do those words mean when these kids hear them? And I think the good news is that they've seen me shift that energy since saying those words. But I'm just I'm sharing that on this platform because we're all works in progress. And so, I share that, knowingly, that I haven't said that in years, but it's part of the wiring that I added to the kids, self-talk. And and my in-laws took that to heart, and they start buying the kids stuff so that they truly own stuff. And I'm like, I don't know if that was really the point. Leave a mark, and it's really important to use this conversation as a springboard to say, how do we do this differently? How do we, I use the word change our game a lot, but how do we do that? And how do we get out of the way of our kids' significance every day and make that choice?
There's a great line that I heard, and I think it's true. It says, how we talk to our kids is how our kids talk to themselves. And so just to be, more present and aware about what comes out of our own mouth sets us up for a conversation about significance or the lack of significance. Sometimes it's making time for our kids. Sometimes it's calling them an idiot because you're frustrated and you can't manage your own world's, traumas. And so that's the conversation they start playing through their heads. I am an idiot. Look at how it happens. Or, Dad's upset. It must have been something I did. And then that conversation plays and plays, and it shows up in weird places as they continue their development. But it's a great line. How you talk to your kids is how your kids talk to themselves.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, it's like those videos you'll see on commercials or whatever, where it's a little kid and he's like, "Damn it," or he'll say a phrase, and it's like that kid just picked that up from mom and dad, because I know I've seen my daughter say things. I'm like, where did you? Oh yeah, I know where you got that from. Or Eric can relate to this too. Is when you're in the divorce situation your kid comes home and says something, you're like, that is so your mom. Like, I know exactly where you got that from. Last time I heard that came out of her mouth. But, each time the Modern Dad Council meets, we discuss really important issues about parenting, relationships, and everything related to being a modern dad. So, we challenge the stereotypes and invite conversations on how to show up big to our lives as men and as dads and as husbands and partners. So I want to thank you guys for coming together and having an opportunity to talk about all these things and share your feelings and thoughts. So thank you, and I'll see you guys next week.
All right, thanks.